Hey, am I on? YouTube was telling me there was no live streaming capability. I'm not sure where that came from. Hey, everybody. I hope I'm live. I think I am. Hey, Daryl. Congrats on being the first comment tonight. Hi, April Johns. Thanks for coming out. Parker's in the house. Hi, Teresa. I hope you got the email I sent you today that you asked for with the conclusion in it. Teresa, I sent that to you. Eric and Laura are here. Eric, I want to know, is there going to be baseball this season or not? I'm just curious because since Mother Nature can't bother to do spring, I'm just curious if baseball is going to do spring this year. DW is here. Going to see DW tomorrow. For those of you who are dropping off food for the Agape Food Drive, be here collecting from 11 to 1. We'll be collecting over by the sanctuary, the door down by the sanctuary, and DW is going to be here helping me with that. So any of you who want to come out tomorrow and drop off some food for Agape, we'll be collecting from 11 to 1 tomorrow for those of you who can be out running around. Hi, Audra. Hope you're staying well. Cool hand, Luke. Luke, I got the food you dropped off, man. Thank you. It's actually sitting right here in my office right now. I'll add it to what I already carried in the fellowship hall for tomorrow's food drive. So thank you, Cool Hand Luke. And Pastor Tim mowed his grass yesterday. I saw him. He wasn't smiling. That's because Pastor Tim was really cold while he was mowing his yard. I had two sweatshirts on. I was mowing my yard with two sweatshirts on. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the very definition of ridiculous. I was so cold by the time I was done with that. My hands were numb and my feet were numb. It was ridiculous. Summer needs to summer like now. I'm sick of it. So I was not very happy. But so the reason I wasn't smiling is because my face was probably frozen and I probably had frostbite or something. So, hey, Dennis Childs, welcome. Janine Goodwin, here in spirit but body, nodding off. I will try to be super entertaining to Janine to try to keep you engaged. Nicole Colmum is in the house. Glad to see you, Nicole. And hope everything's well up in Lima Way. Who else we got here? We got, hey, Dave. Dave and Amy are here. Cool. Angie Myers, how you doing? Yes, Audra, I saw the snow for this weekend, and this is my not happy face. That's how I feel about it right now. So Teresa's hugging Nikki. Congratulations on that. That's a good social distance hug there. Miriam Lynch is here. Good. Eric says, I'm hearing Florida and Arizona not in home stadiums, not giving up. I know. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, the NBA lost the whole season, so I don't know what they're going to do. Teresa, oh, yeah, you're welcome, Teresa. Joe Sutton's giving us a whoop whoop. We're glad you're here, Joe. Randy Ryan, I heard you had a very special client up at OIO today. A certain somebody from the Bible study. Randy, with your permission, Alice K told me the story. Am I allowed to tell the story? Tell me yes or no if that's okay if I tell that story. Joyce is in the house. Everybody, Joyce donated 7 4-packs of chicken for the food drive tomorrow. So Joyce, thank you for that. Hi, Linda Burkholder. Hi, Cheryl Cuck. Crystal Dove, Crystal and Bill in the house. Hi, guys. Scott and Janet are here. Jessica is here, and apparently she is frozen. And if she starts singing, "Do you want to build a snowman?" She's going to be fired. So there you go. Joe Sutton is wiping his nose. Social distance, Joe. Really, DeGraff got snow and hail today, Teresa. That's terrible. I'm sorry. Audra Sutton says, do you want to build a snowman? Answer is nope. Teresa laughed at Audra, so Teresa's not my friend anymore either. So there you go. Randy. Okay, Randy gave me a yes. Here's the story. Alice K texted me about it. Alice K and Bill have been in the chat. You guys have probably seen them a couple times. And Teresa, if I get any part of this story wrong, correct me. So I don't know how many of you know this. Randy Ryan works at OIO, has for a while. And today she was, and earlier today, I got a text from Alice K they were going up for a test that Alice needed on her neck. And so Alice K was up there. And lo and behold, Randy checked Alice K in. Now, these two women don't know each other from nobody, recognize each other from the chat, and were able to connect to OIO because of this experience. How cool is that? Somebody get in the chat room and just tell me exactly how cool that is, because that's pretty cool. And I just think that that's, I mean, two people who had no reason to ever know each other knew each other through this experience. I just think that's awesome. So that's fantastic. So yeah, that's great. So cool. All right, that's my fun story for tonight. I just thought that was, I think that's great because I knew Randy was at my church at Forest Park, and then obviously Alice K and Bill are down here, and I just think that's awesome. I mean, the only way they knew each other is because of the chat room, and now they have faces to put with names, and I just think that's super cool. All right. Gosh, I'm way off now. Daryl and Gene are here. All right, cool. Nikki misses Teresa. Everybody misses Teresa. Gene Smith, gay. Way to go, Joyce. Hey, Michelle Curie, my 7th favorite person, is in the house. Hi, Michelle. I hope your world is wonderfully random, as we all know it is. And all right. Here we go. Jess Skinner. Oh, you won't build one with me, Snow Angels? Jess? No. Candy and Tim are here. Randy's been working at OIO for 20 and a half years. Did you start when you were 4? Goodness gracious, Randy. All right. Michelle gave us an awesome. That's good. Teresa gave us an awesome. Got a cool and an awesome and a very cool. And Joe Sutton is freezing. Love it. That's as cool as your fingers were yesterday, Cool Hand Luke. That's pretty cool now. That is pretty cool. Cool Hand Luke, you get a gold star for that comment. That's awesome. Got an amen from Eric. Very cool. Felt blessed to help her. Thank you, Pastor Tim, for doing my agape shopping. We all doing our part. And actually, it was my first venture to Walmart since this fiasco started. And so I came home with a whole bunch of cans because Susan and I bought more stuff. So we ended up with a whole trunk full, a whole beetle full of cans. So, big hello for Margie and Doug. Glad to see the Whitlings. Hugs for Michelle and Randy. Hugs for Tim and everyone. Those are, of course, socially distanced acceptable hugs from Teresa. Sue's in the house. Hey, Suze. Michelle says, wonderfully random, but actually Nikki seems to be living in my world with Bronson. I heard the story. Yes, Bronson, who is Nikki's son, has introduced a high level of randomness into Nikki's life, which I'm sure she's awesomely appreciative of. Tim, building a snowman could build upper body strength. Yeah, it could also build frustration too. And I'm just pointing it out, Gene. But thanks for that. And man, we got a lot of people hugging everybody. Everybody's just like hug deprived. I mean, we're gonna hug everybody. And so Randy, cool. Jess agrees with Gene, and that means that neither Gene nor Jess are my friend anymore. So that's all right. Now you guys can be that way. All right, cool. All right, good deal. I have to tell you, today I was working on some videos for Sunday, and I was editing an absolutely beautiful video of Daryl singing Christ the Lord, or Crown Him with Many Crowns for Sunday. And I was putting the words in so you guys will be able to sing that with First Light on Sunday, which means I had to listen to it just a little, like 4 seconds at a time so I could get the words in there right. So I have the lyrics to Crown Him with Many Crowns bouncing around in my head to the point that I almost was going to sing that for you tonight. But I didn't because Daryl did such a much better job. I mean, and that's not really saying a whole lot, but Daryl did so much better job than I did that I didn't want to belittle what he was doing. So, but anyways, just know for Sunday, we're going to be, during First Light, we'll be singing Crown Him with Many Crowns, and that's an absolutely beautiful hymn. So, all right, good. Let's see here. Joyce Koenig, just throw a snowball at Jess. I will be throwing something at Jess. We'll find out what that is. Nikki is exhausted living in her world. I thought Bronson, that would be a given. Oh, Jess, you'll always be my favorite. I'm sure that comment was not addressed to me. Cheryl, we're even here with Slow Technology. Welcome. And Daryl says, thanks. Well, Daryl, you earned it, buddy. So that's you're more than welcome. And thank you for trimming the trees today, too, out there in that, sub-zero weather we were having. So everybody, tonight's the last night for Dangerous Prayers. Who's sad to see this book go? Anybody sad to see it go? Also, while you're answering that question, I have another one for you. Did any of you tune in to the youth group presentation we had earlier? We were playing the match game with me and Leah Downs. And, so we had a thing in there where if you typed in answers that matched answers that Leah and I came up with, you got points and stuff. It was pretty fun. Hey, Parker. And then Phil had an absolutely great lesson on the Apostle Thomas. And just a great take on Thomas I'd never thought of before. So if you want to click on our channel, of course, after the live stream is over, you can click over there and have a look at that. I thought it was a lot of fun to come in there, but I had never thought of Thomas that way before, and I thought it was very, very well done. So you guys go give some props to Phil. So all right, cool. I doubt we will like it. Yeah, you still show up, Joe. I don't get that. So, all right, I have wasted 10 minutes. Maybe we better like actually do some content here tonight. Or else I could just sit here. We could just talk tonight. You guys want to talk tonight? Yeah. When you guys are done, it's about a 40-minute video. It's on the Forest Park. It's on the what's the name of the church we used to go to? Wayne Street. It's on the Wayne Street channel, and you can jump in there and have a look at it. So, all right. Wait, dang, we got 41 people here tonight. Welcome, everybody. So glad to have you all, and I promise I'm not just going to be random all night. We're going to actually do some stuff. So, all right. Well, this is chapter 3.8, which is the final chapter. Any of you who have been struggling with this awful worksheet that I'm making you guys look at, anybody struggling with this, get a copy of the conclusion to this book. If you don't have the book, that's entirely fine. Drop me an email. I have it so I can email it to you. It's about 10 pages, and it's a pretty quick read. But if you want to read, he gives some examples in there that I think will help you fill out this worksheet that I made for you. Now, one of the things that you guys have been really struggling with, I promise we're going to get to the book, but let me deal with this first. One of the things you guys have been struggling with this worksheet about how things work is what to do. What are spiritual things we should starve? Yeah, I have a few of them filled out too, Audrey. I don't even have half of them done. So if you don't have them done, don't worry about it. What are some spiritual practices that somebody should starve? Let me give you an example, and I didn't want to share a whole lot of my stuff on there because it's my stuff and I don't really want to put it on the internet, but this is one I think is okay to share. One of the things that I did for the spiritual thing, and I'm sure none of you are going to find this surprising in any way. I absolutely love the spoken word. I love to hear people who are good communicators. I love to go back and watch famous speeches. I love to read famous speeches. I like to hear the very, very few politicians there are out there who can speak clearly. I love to hear them speak, especially when they're speaking with content and with passion. I think that's wonderful. When you've got a minister, a preacher, and she or he is got a topic they're passionate about and have a great point to make. I love that. And out of that great passion that I have, and I'm sure, again, given what I do for a living, none of you find that surprising in any way. I find myself on the internet. I'm not a big music person. I like music. I appreciate people who can sing music. You guys heard me complimenting Daryl just a moment ago. I love our Awaken band. I like to hear April and Josh and Leah all sing. It lifts my heart to hear that. And I will say I've gone back and watched the video from last Sunday just to hear the band sing because I love that. So don't think I'm against that, but I don't gravitate toward that. I enjoy the spoken word and I love clarity in speaking. And what that means is I love to watch podcasts or listen. I guess you listen to podcasts, but stuff on YouTube where you can listen to commentary. I don't even care what it is. I'll watch people speak about movie reviews for movies I've never heard of and have no intention to ever see, but I'll watch them because the women and men who do that on the internet are good enough at it that they made a living at it. I mean, their living is to be able to speak and articulate clearly, and I really enjoy that. And what I find that causes me to do is I if I'm at home and I'm going to turn something on, I'll turn on a podcast. And again, it might be a topic I don't even care about. It might be a political thing that I could care less about. But that person, whoever it is speaking in a way that's very clear. And I love that because then I get to hear somebody comment on something. And I really enjoy that. Well, what I found is that is in a way a spiritual practice because I look at that as sort of many of you have, what's it called? Continuing education. You got to go on for training. Well, I look at it that way. I take very, very seriously my responsibility to be able to speak clearly to you good folks, not only in this format, but, remember when we used to get together for church? I take that very seriously, and I have my entire career, and I dedicated myself to developing that skill of being able to speak clearly, because there is nothing worse than going to a sermon and 2 minutes into that thing, you're like, what in God's name is that person talking about? There's nothing worse than that. And I'm not saying I've never done that before. I'm sure I have more times than I want to admit, but I always try not to do that. And I'm trying to train myself. I write and rewrite sermons because I love clarity and I like to learn how to be clear. And that's what a lot of these podcasts do because they have a premise, they have a series of beliefs, and I may not even agree with them, but that's irrelevant to me. I want to learn how to communicate what I'm trying to say. I want to be able to say, here's the lesson, and I want to be able to speak very clearly about it. Because, so what I'm getting to in this is that's a spiritual practice is watching podcasts and listening to podcasts. And I do it a lot. I'm home. I got my sink full of dishes and I'm washing up the dishes or I'm folding laundry and I got a podcast running. Well, what I've decided to do is I put that on the starve side because I'm pretty sure that Pastor Tim doesn't need to be listening to podcasts about movies I've never heard of or hear somebody talk about something that I don't even know what it is. But because I enjoy hearing somebody explain something and explain it clearly and articulately and passionately and to be able to do that, I really enjoy that. I love documentaries. I love those kinds of things. But what I found is that even though that's a very spiritual practice for me, I'm going to have to put it on the starve side because I know I'm over. Because one of the things I'm neglecting is the worship side. So on the feed side of my spiritual thing, I have worship music over here, and I've downloaded some into my phone, and I went out and bought myself a new little speaker that is for no more than I paid for. It's really high quality. Great sound comes out of it. So I can put music on at my house and listen to that and get into a more worshipful mode than in a learning mode. Does that make sense? So yes, a podcast can be a spiritual practice. Maybe not one that many of you are going to graduate or are going to gravitate toward, but it means something to me. But I know, even though that's good for me, I need to spend the time worshiping rather than learning. Not to say learning is not important. It's not to say I'm never going to listen to another podcast again, but I need to balance that. I need to have some worship in there. Some time to just praise God for who he is and what he is and why he is. And so I could put podcast on the starve side, put worship on the feed side. Does that help? I know a lot of you have been struggling with how that works. Does that explanation help? That's how it's working in my life. Because yes, I can certainly justify listening to podcasts because a lot of you want to know what I think about things going on in the world today. What does Pastor Tim think about COVID-19? What do I think about politics? What do I think about, whether or not government should run healthcare? You guys want to know what I think about that. So I take that responsibility seriously, probably too seriously, because I research that stuff a lot to be able to, I would never preach a political sermon. I know some people have accused me of that. I would never do that. But a lot of you have questions about that. And I feel like as your pastor, it is my responsibility to be able to comment on some of that stuff. So podcasts are a way I do that, but I need to balance the podcasts. I need to balance the learning, the cerebral part of that with the heart part, because I skip this part a lot. And I want to be able to have more worship. In order to do that, I have to give up some podcast time. And that's why the sacrifice is. So instead of saying I'm going to neglect personal relationships and not have friends anymore so that I can listen to worship music and podcasts, I'm actually cutting the podcast down so I can listen to the worship music. Does that explanation help? Somebody get in and say if I just wasted the last 10 minutes explaining this. Does that explanation help as to how this works? Okay. Miriam says yes. Teresa, yes. I do think God. Thank you, Teresa, and I take that very seriously. And okay, all right. So I hope that helps with what you're doing. I love podcasts. Also, I'm cutting back too. I won't tell you about a great one on the Trojan War. Then please don't, because I might be like, hey, y'all, I'm going to be over here doing. I mean, yeah. So I only wasted 4 minutes of my 10-minute explanation. Awesome, thanks, Joe. So. All right, Angie says it makes sense now. Randy's a little more with it now. Kim, okay. All right. So that's the way I see it working. Because a lot of times, again, and this is what I want to warn you against in doing this. We say, I want to focus on this area, so I'm just going to cut from this unrelated area. I need to work on, my physical life, so I'm going to cut the time and effort from my professional life to do that. Don't do that. That's bad. And it's got to be sacrifices made in kind, or else you're just starving a section of your life that you're going to want to be healthy. All of you out there, yes, you want me to be informed, but you also want me to be filled. You want my heart to be filled. You want my mind to be clear. You don't want me to get there to preach a sermon like on Sunday we're going to talk about commitment, and you don't want healthcare ramifications bouncing around in my head. You want me to hear God's voice. I know you do, because that's what I want too. And that's where we are. And Joe, I absolutely love you too, my man. So, all right. So keep working on those. I don't have mine filled out either. And I want that to be a tool for you to be able to make some positive changes in your life. And we're not finishing it tonight. We're going to continue to come back to that as we move into Joseph tomorrow night. Okay. All right, Tim, let's get to something here with some content. All right. So 3.8. He begins this chapter by relaying a story that he heard apparently another pastor tell him at some point. And he describes the I don't know, about halfway through the paragraph, there's a sentence that says, this other pastor described the joy of hugging the grandmas and high-fiving the younger kids week after week. Y'all remember doing that? I remember I used to do that, back in the day. Hopefully someday we'll be doing that again, hugging grandmas and high-fiving kids. Tell me, why is high-fiving grandmas and hugging kids? Oops, that's not it. Hugging grandmas and high-fiving kids. Why is that a great way to connect with a congregation? Why is hugging grandmas and high-fiving kids? Why is that a great way for a pastor to connect with a congregation? Why is that good? Or is it good? Maybe it's not good. What do you think? Hugging grandmas and high-fiving kids. What does that say to a congregation from the pastor? Yeah, lull everybody to sleep. Do I need to shake the screen and get you all woke up? Wake up, guys. Okay, so connection, and importance. Yes, I think that all agrees. It gives everybody a personal connection. And I think that's important because I think that's a part of belonging, is it not? To have a connection with the people who come. Everybody wants to connect with somebody, and hugging grandmas and high-fiving kids is a great way to connect with a wide variety of people. And it's not being afraid of COVID-19. Yeah, that's back when we used to be like that. Everybody needs a hug, obviously, because hug is going to be apparently the theme of the night here. So it's personal. Hugs and high fives are how you show you care about them, Gene. I would certainly agree with that. Personal, some people need touch. Kim, you're right. Some people's love language is touch. Joe, show love in the way that connects to their language. Yes, love language. If any of you have ever read the book, The 5 Love Languages that are out there. It's personal. Angie says, Trina says, the human touch. It's important. It is. I mean, how much has this last month been sort of a science project for how important it is to interact in personal ways? It's that's what we've learned. That's what COVID-19 has taught us. Candy says, makes it feel like they matter. Yeah, it makes everybody feel important. Everybody wants to do that. Everybody, Teresa is now giving fair warning. Everybody better be prepared when we get back because she's a hugger, and I can attest to that. And so everybody keep that in mind, and just know that that's what you got coming. So, all right. So this pastor was talking about a conversation he had with a guy named Matt, and Ed Koenig. Hugs are why God gave you arms, and what better use of arms are there than that? So Matt comes up to this pastor after church service, which, I mean, has happened to me many times. People will come up to me and speak after church service, like a lot. And so the pastor or this person named Matt came up and said, Pastor, I want you to know that my answer is yes. Now, what's the question? If you've read the chapter, or let me basically get down to what happens is, the pastor was like, have a nice day, because he wasn't sure how to respond. The next Sunday, Matt came up and said the same thing. Hey, pastor wants you to know the answer is yes, and let me know. And the pastor was like, have a nice day. Thinking maybe I'm not understanding something. So the third Sunday, Matt comes up and says, Pastor, I want you to know the answer is yes, and have a great day. And the pastor's like, all right, we need to talk. How about coffee? Matt says, I already said the answer was yes, so we're going to do that. So they met the next Tuesday, had a conversation, and Matt kind of gave a little bit of his testimony about some of the difficult times he'd been through in his life and some of the rough things that had happened, and how moved he was by the grace of God to be able to, because he had lost so much. He'd lost his wife, he'd lost his kids, he'd lost his family. Everybody walked away from him, and he talked about how many mistakes he'd made in that process. And we really, my heart goes out to the guy, because a lot of us have been there. And but he said, because of God's grace, now, Pastor, if there's ever anything comes along, somebody needs a yard mowed, there's a single mother who needs money, there's something that needs done in the church, my answer is already yes. My friends, what kind of a level of trust does it show to do that? To say, my answer is yes, before the question is even spoken, before the question is even realized. What kind of trust does this person, Matt, have in the pastor, that he would go to the pastor and say, my answer will always be yes? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. How much trust does that show? How much trust are we talking about? Yes, extreme and huge. I think those are two very appropriate words, Teresa and Gene. Extreme and huge. Massive trust. I mean, can any of you name anybody? All right, we got a 10 and 11. You're getting close, I think, from Margie and from Candy. Can you think of any human being that you would say that to? Yeah, you guys got it. 10 and 10 plus and 11. Yep, absolute blind trust. Can you think of any other human being you would say that to? I mean, I wouldn't expect any of you to say that to me. I'm not even sure I would want you to. But what kind of trust would it take? I mean, what is Matt's opinion of the pastor, whoever this, because he's not named? What is Matt's opinion of the pastor of this church that he would say something like that? I've been doing this for a long time. got a couple of no's. But oh, the no is to is there another human being you say this to? Sorry. I thought it was about saying that to me. Sorry. I asked too many questions in a row and I lost where the answers were coming from. Yes. I mean, I can't think of anybody I'd say that to because that is a level of trust that is just, I don't even know what the word is. It's a lot of trust. I mean, there's a lot of people who won't say yes when you ask the question. And now there's a lot of people that I know who would go the opposite way. How many people out there are saying no before they know the question? So, yeah, maybe a father figure type relation, depending on your idea of fathers. Absolutely. That might be one place. Cool hand, Luke. Tim, if you said yes, the person I know, Gene, hence you don't hear this face in that, do you? Because I have too much respect for our choir and the Awakened band to expect something like that to happen. And so Teresa says that to her family. You trust your family a lot more than I probably trust mine. So tell me, how many times though do we say no before the question gets asked? Now I know he doesn't deal with that in this chapter, but if we talk about how off the wall it is for somebody to say yes, how off the wall is it for somebody to say no? I'm really not interested in being blessed like that. I mean, really, how many people do you know say no before the question even gets asked? Because I've seen that. I've never seen what he describes here about somebody saying yes before the question gets asked. But I have certainly seen people who the answer is no before the question is even formulated. And that's a difficult place to be in because that basically says you're closing yourself off to anything that could possibly happen. Okay. All right. One of the things. Okay, so one of the things that Matt and this pastor who's telling the story have is they go to this coffee shop and they have what he describes here as a pretty moving experience, a kind of a moment of transparency and a moment of connection, where they're kind of sharing things and talking about stuff and kind of getting to the root of things. But yes, cool hand, Luke. A lot of let me think about it. Yeah, which is clearly not an automatic yes. You're definitely right about that. But one of the things that this pastor said is when they were having this conversation across the table, across their cups of coffee, and they're kind of having this moment together, a moment where they kind of broke down some walls, which guys don't do very well. Kind of got down to some real issues, which again, guys don't do very well. And it says here that the two guys cried together, which again, men definitely don't do very well. So the pastor and this guy, Matt, both sat there for a moment and they were both realized that they had a connection with each other through Jesus, which, I mean, that does happen. That's not a terribly foreign experience. So once they realized that their paths may have been different, the road they traveled may have been different, but their guide along the way was the same person. It was Jesus. So they suddenly realized, even though their lives had taken radically different courses, they realized that they had similar experiences at the hand of the same God. Have you ever had that realization? Ever had a conversation with somebody, ever had an experience with somebody where, you didn't know each other well when the thing started, and all of a sudden you realized that this is a brother or sister in Christ? You didn't have much in common, really. They're not somebody you would have socially connected with all that well. But all of a sudden you realize, oh my word. I'm not talking anything dumb. I'm not talking romantic or anything stupid like that. I'm simply mean you suddenly realize that you and this person are bonded in a way that's deeper than than just what's on the surface, because you may not have known each other all that long, but because you both are Christ followers, because you both have a Jesus connection, you suddenly realize that, you know, we we have a connection. You know, we are brothers or sisters in Christ. Gene says yes, and that connection is more powerful than any others. That's true. And Wesley's covenant prayer. Yeah, we read that the other night. It's been a while ago now, but Cool Hand Luke had that connection with Tim Tuttle, and I could see that. Tim's a pretty good guy. So Emmaus Audra certainly creates a lot of those kind of connections. Absolutely, says Randy. God brings those connections together. I'm curious about some of the rest of you. Anybody ever had an experience like that? Had a meaningful friendship kind of blossom almost immediately because of your shared faith, because because of what's going on. There were times during Cheryl. I'm not sure what KAYA. I'm not sure what that is, but yeah. I mean, yeah. There's a lot of experiences that can provide those things. Mission trip is a big one. I've been on a number of mission trips all over the world, and yes, there's definitely a connective experience with that kind of stuff. It's amazing, what climbing a volcano will do for your connection with the people you're with. Oh, come as you are. I'm stupid. Thank you, Cheryl. And yeah, and and sometimes that come as you are can be pretty rough, and that can create some wonderful connections. Angie Meyer says, yes, I did on a mission trip. Yeah, there's mission trip again. And those mission trip experiences can be incredibly powerful. So, Christian friend that you may not have seen each other for a while, but it feels like you've never been apart, Trina. Yep. Because the connection there is more than just, I like you. The connection there is we share a bond. And Sherry certainly is powerful and amazing. And Crystal and Cheryl are on the same page on that one. So, yeah, and those are some powerful moments that we have that we might miss if our default answer is no, or if we're going to quote Cool Hand Luke and say, "Well, think about it." But Matt and this pastor from the story had this experience, and remember where it started. It started from the Matt saying something the pastor didn't understand. What do you mean? The answer is yes. I didn't ask nothing. And yeah, the spiritual connection is very important. It goes far beyond any other kind of connection we have there, Teresa. And these two men, the pastor and Matt, had that. Dave had that with a pen pal from Kentucky. Or is that Amy? I'm not. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes that can happen. And those connections can be very powerful. And sometimes we may miss the opportunity to make them by saying no. A couple of you said mission trips. Man, mission trips are easy to say no to. And there's a lot of possibility of things you could experience by putting yourself out there. Okay, so excuse me. So that's kind of where Matt ends his I'll call it his spiel, and talks about how Matt was dedicated. If the pastor asked, the answer was yes. And Craig has a line of commentary here who says, now that's the heart of a person God can use. Somebody whose default setting is yes. That's the heart of a person that God can use. What's the word that we've been kind of kicking around throughout this entire study? Willing. If your answer is automatically yes, my friends, that is the epitome of being willing. And that's what Matt had dedicated himself to being, was willing. And he got to reap all the benefits that come from that. Sure, there were some trials, and I'm sure it was sometimes tough, but all the blessings that goes with being the heart of a person that God can use, he got to reap all those things. Got to enjoy all of that. Okay, I'm skipping into the next paragraph here for those of you who may be following along to the paragraph that starts with such openness is the essence of this dangerous prayer. There's a sentence right about in the middle where Craig says, because of God's goodness, God's grace, and God's love, Isaiah's response was bold. Now let me do a quick reminder with you here. The scripture lesson or the scripture passage we've been come on here, mouse. The scripture passage that we've been working with this week is Isaiah 6. And it's Isaiah walks into God's throne room. He's not supposed to be there. God's looking for somebody to send on a mission. You know, everybody's kind of saying, I'll get back with you, kind of what Quinn and Luke said. And all of a sudden, Isaiah's in the back going, oh, I'll do it. Send me. Even though everybody's like, how did the mortal get in here? Does everybody know what the mortal's doing? And so he wasn't supposed to be there. But because Isaiah experienced what Craig describes as God's goodness, God's grace, and God's love, Isaiah gave an incredibly bold response. It would be like almost like a child wandering into an adult Sunday school class, and they're looking for a volunteer for some, and the child says, "I'll do it." Kind of like a boy walking up to a battle line and seeing a mouthy giant and saying, "Well, I'll go kill that guy for you." And that's David, right? And the reason that these folks were willing, like Isaiah, to give such a bold response was because they had experienced those three things: God's grace, or God's goodness, God's grace, and God's love. Is our sometimes lack of enthusiasm about responding and getting involved, do you think that sometimes that lack of enthusiasm is because we feel deficient in one of these three categories? We don't think we experience God's goodness, we don't accept God's grace, or we doubt God's love. Is that what makes us hesitant to want to jump in and get involved? Because Isaiah clearly felt those things because he was jumping into something he had no business being a part of. But he jumped into it because he wanted to be, he wanted to respond. He wanted to respond to God because he had experienced his goodness, grace, and love. And because of those things, Isaiah said, of course I want to be in this. Look at all the stuff that God has done for me. And I want to get involved, and I want to do good things. I want to respond in a positive and uplifting way. Is it possible that maybe we don't do this? We don't jump up and get involved because for some reason we are struggling with the concepts of God's goodness, God's grace, and God's love. Because let me tell you something. If Isaiah walks into that throne room in Isaiah chapter 6 and has a single molecule of doubt about God's goodness, grace, or love, what does Isaiah do? Well, first let's start with what Isaiah don't do. And it's, woo, send me. He don't say that. If he has one shadow of doubt, he turns around and slowly tiptoes out of the room and shuts the door and prays that no one realized he was there. That is Isaiah's response if he has any doubt about these things. So my question is, sometimes when we or other people struggle to get involved or want to say, I'll get back with you, or it's not real sure, is it because we possibly question or doubt God's goodness, grace, and or love? Got a couple yeses, got a no in there too. Gene says possibly. I think often it's because of our overcommitment to other activities, our kids' events. In other words, we're too busy. I agree with that. Is that because we trust the goodness, grace, and love of those other things more than God? Again, I don't know. I'm throwing it out there for conversation. Is it possible that we look at these other whatever as having more value, having more goodness, having more grace, having more love than what God is offering? And if so, is that a perception issue or is that reality? I mean, that's something we all have to wrestle with. Cheryl says, yes, but I can know all those things and still feel shy about joining. Can you? You know, I see insecurity, inadequacy. I know we all deal with those feelings. And again, I'm not putting anybody on the spot here. But if you, I mean, let's turn the tables here a little bit. If you had complete confidence and complete assurance of my goodness, grace, and love, which I'm human, you shouldn't put that kind of value on me. Okay. So if you believed that I had God levels of goodness, grace, and love, would that include the trust that I'm not going to put you in a position where you're going to fail? If you're going to put confidence in the goodness, grace, and love of Tim Benjamin, this face right here, doesn't that include, or wouldn't that create trust that I am never going to allow you to fail? That doesn't mean that everything's always going to go peachy, but I'm never going to allow you to fail. Doesn't that imply that level of trust? I'm not saying it's not scary. I'm certainly not saying that. But wouldn't that imply that, I'm going to have your back? If something goes wrong, I'm going to have to clean it up. If somebody gets mad, I'm going to, pull their tongue out. I'll do those things. So doesn't having confidence in my goodness, grace, and love, doesn't that make you trust me enough to say, well, if you think I can do it, maybe I can? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because I think a lot of times our feelings of inadequacy and our feelings of not having what it takes to do whatever job is in front of us. I honestly think that comes from the other guy. I don't think that's based in reality. Now, surely there are some things we shouldn't be doing. I mean, I'm not going to accept a call tomorrow to become a brain surgeon. That's just not in the cards for me. And we joke around a lot about my tone deafness and the fact that I can't sing. And that's, I love joking about that. So I don't think singing a solo in the choir is anything Daryl would ever want to have happen, and for good reason. So we all understand our limitations there. And I will couple that with the fact that I have never in my life felt called to join a choir of any kind. And so that's not it. But I think if God's going to put a burden on your heart, which I've never had a burden to sing, I've never, ever felt anything like that. I think that if I feel a burden from God, even if it's scary, like, I don't know, having to have a 25-minute speech once a week for the rest of my life, that's a tad intimidating because I'm not a natural public speaker. I'm not very good at it. It's not something that I had a preaching professor in seminary who tried his best to fail me because he said, I don't know what you're doing, kid. They ain't doing it right. And so I know that I struggle with that. It's not a talent. So in order for me to say, all right, 25-minute speech every week for the rest of my life, that took a lot of trust. But because I put my trust in God's grace, goodness, grace, and love, I'm not saying that every sermon I ever preach is going to be a home run, obviously. But I trust enough to know that if I'm going to go out there, God's going to take something that this bumbling moron's going to say and going to make something good come from it. I put aside the fact that I feel like I look foolish every week. I put that aside to glorify God who's done so much for me. I don't have the first clue why God wanted me in this job. I don't. Every morning I get up and think, wow, still okay. Because there's so much I don't have to do this job. There's so much I lack. But because I am so appreciative of the fact that my grandparents are all in heaven, and I'm so appreciative of the fact that someday I'm going to meet my great-great-grandfather, and someday I'm going to have God say, thank you for what you've done, even as little as inadequate as it was. and there's going to be people who are going to come up to me in heaven and say, your life meant something to me. Holy cow. That motivates me like I can't even begin to tell you, because I know doing this, because of the goodness, grace, and love that God has shown to this guy, I can make a difference. It may not be a radical difference, but we're going to take a whole truckload of pop top canned soup down to Agape tomorrow because I sent out an email. That's got to count for something, doesn't it? And that would not be able to happen if I allowed my inadequacy to talk me out of it. And believe me, I easily could do that. Easily. I would have to put forth zero effort for that to happen. But because I trust God's goodness, grace, and love, that he's going to not let me screw up too awfully bad, God keeps taking my inadequate effort and blessing it more than I deserve. So I think a lot of times the reason that we struggle to step out is because we are, I don't want to say doubting, but we are not confident in God's goodness, grace, and love. And I think if more people were confident in that goodness, grace, and love, um, I think the world would be a different place. But that's just me, and that's what I get paid to say. But I just feel like, for all these people who deal with feelings of inadequacy, I promise you, I feel them twice as much as you. Look, I have to stand up in front of crowds of people who had a loved one just die, and I have to go into a hospital to people who can't breathe, and I've got to, feed people who are strung out on drugs, and I've got to, I do this stuff a lot. I don't do it every day, but I do it a lot. I don't know what to do about that. I one time I had a guy in my office. This was a number of years ago, who was just struggling with drug addiction. The guy was messed up half the time, and he'd come in and talk to me, and I could smell it on him, and I got sick of it. And so one day, and this is before I bariatric surgery, so I was a pretty big guy at the time. I got up, I threw him against the wall, and I said, "If I find out you're using one more time, I'm going to break your skull with my bare hands." That was the wrong thing to say. But the guy was clean for the next month or two because he thought I was a lunatic. Uh, I don't know where the guy is now. This was probably 20 years ago when I had that conversation. But I never, ever, ever allowed having no idea what I'm doing stop me from doing something. And that guy had a wife who needed him not to be strung out, and I was mad. And so I think that sometimes we get real caught up on this inadequacy thing. And I think that that's the devil's tool to work against us, because I have seen so much amazing stuff in my life come from just a relentless moron like myself, who said, God showed me a lot of goodness, grace, and love, and he has asked me to show that to other people. And I can't explain what goes on. I don't know how this stuff happens. I don't know where sermons come from. I don't know where these Bible studies happen. I have no I have no idea. I've seen it happen enough times that I believe it. And I simply am having this opportunity to tell the 36 of you who are still logged in here that I want you to believe it too. I can't explain how it works. I just know it does. And I feel very, very sad when I see people who are infinitely more qualified than I am, far smarter than I am, have a lot more to offer than I could on my best day of my life, say, I just don't know, because it's not about your inadequacy, my friends. It's about what can be done through you if you're just going to be willing. We got this totally turned around. And that's why this worksheet I've been torturing you all with. That's why I gave it to you. Because I want you to align your life to great principles. Am I standing before you as a great example of that? No. I'm still working on it just like you are. But at the end of the day, I want to be able to say that I did the best I could do. I have far exceeded any kind of reasonable expectation I could ever have of myself, and allowed just a lot of good things to happen. And I want you to know that everybody can do the same thing. There's nothing fantastic about anything I've done. It's just about what I have seen happen and what I would love to see happen for more people. And I get so sad when people automatically going back to Matt from the book, who instead of automatically saying yes, I see so many people who are automatically saying no. And that's really too bad. So, and you guys have got me off on an awesome tangent tonight, haven't you? I appreciate you guys coming back and listening to my ranting. I probably spend too much time by myself anymore. Might be part of the problem. All right. You know what? I think I've killed the rest of this chapter. So, uh, fear shows we're relying on our own efforts and not trusting our Savior. Grow in faith, and we need to trust Him. Means you don't let fear stop you. Angie Myers, amen to that. And I think that that's exactly what we're trying to get to here. That's what dangerous prayers do, is about putting the focus back where it belongs, and it ain't in us, to allow God the chance to do something great through us. So, all right, we got about 3 minutes left here. I promised you a very brief talk about Sunday, and then I want to real quick look at what we're going to do tomorrow, and I'm going to do that in 3 minutes. So, any of you who are interested in having a conversation, or I'm not a conversation, have advanced look at Sunday, the scripture lesson we're going to be looking at. Yes, availability. It's willingness, Jack and Cheryl. That's what it's all about. And so many people just aren't even available. They're not even willing to even try. And I say that those people are struggling with God's goodness, grace, and love. Now, what is one of the ways that we can turn the corner on that and be able to look into the future with a little more optimism? And I think that is we need to see ourselves as a part of God's plan, which is exactly why that's our next sermon series. And we're going to talk about the 6 C's. That's letter C, the 6 C's of God's plan. And we're going to look at those 6 C's through the eyes of your good friend and mine, Ruth. We're going back to the Old Testament, and we're going to look at Ruth. And so the first C, I'll go ahead and let this out of the bag, is commitment. If you're going to try to focus on God's goodness, grace, and love, and to be able to be willing and to live into a meaningful future, then one thing you're going to have to be is committed. I mean, there is literally no way around it. And what we're going to talk about Sunday for the live streams or for the worship services on YouTube is we're going to talk about how Satan chips away at our commitment. Now, commitment, we get committed to a lot of things. You know, we're committed to our marriages, we're committed to our families, we're committed to our jobs, we're committed to, certain principles and goals we have in life. We're also committed to God, I certainly hope. And I think that these 7, and I'm not going to give them any of them away because I don't want any of you to be like, well, I don't need to come Sunday because you better be here because there's more going on than just me talking. But we're going to look at 7 ways that Satan chips away at your commitment, because that's how it works. Very, very rarely. I can't say, you can never say never about anything, but very rarely does commitment crash in a sort of a Titanic kind of just cataclysmic mess. Normally when a commitment is broken, it's chipped away at, a little cutting of the corner here, and a little, we're letting down of a value there, and a little bit of erosion of things that we think are important. And it happens over time. And all of a sudden you realize, wow, we've really drifted a far way away. And those opportunities to drift away come in a lot of forms. So if you want to be praying about Sunday, what I would encourage you to pray about are those things that erode away your commitment to God's goodness, grace, and love. And that's right straight from what Craig has talked about. And it's amazing how these themes kind of run together. because God's goodness, grace, and love is a very good thing. You want to talk about somebody who struggled with God's goodness, grace, and love, and even though he didn't seem to experience much of it, he never doubted it, and that was our good friend Joseph, whom we will be starting with tomorrow night. So kind of got two consecutive things going on here. We're going to be looking at Ruth for the Sunday sermons, but starting tomorrow night, we're going to be looking at Joseph. Ruth and Joseph actually have a fair amount of stuff in common. Both of them went through significant hardships, and both of them ended up doing great things with their life in spite of the oppositions that they faced. So that's who we're going to be looking at. So if you would like to prep for tomorrow night, it's pretty simple. All you got to do is read Genesis 37. Just read the whole chapter. I don't know how much we'll get done tomorrow night. We'll kind of see how the discussion goes. But if you'd like a head start on what our topic for tomorrow and probably next day and a few days after that will be, is just go read Genesis. Genesis 37. And what we're going to do is we're going to trace a journey. We're going to trace a journey. We're gonna watch a dreamer, Joseph. We're gonna watch a dreamer become a hero. And there's a lot of people out there who dream about being heroes, but actually very few of them ever attain that status. And it's usually because they get broken down along the way. And Satan ends up chipping away at their commitment till they fall. And that's exactly what Satan is going to try to do for years to Joseph. But God put a very specific call in Joseph's life. God also put a very specific call in Ruth's life. Ruth was called to become the grandmother of King David. Joseph's call was to cancel a famine. Those are both pretty big calls. Kings and famines are a pretty big deal. And from a very insignificant place, these two people rose to the challenge rather than retreated from it. And they believed always in God's goodness, grace, and love. They had every reason to doubt, but they never did. And because of that, they were willing, and God did very great things through them. And that makes both Ruth and Joseph great lessons for us. So I hope that you'll join us tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. We're going to begin this journey with Joseph. Okay, my goodness gracious, I had a lot to say tonight. Will you guys jump in the chat room and say something and make me feel better about how much I've been talking? Sorry, I was on a tangent today. I was working on the sermon and I had that bouncing around in my head, and I wanted to talk about it because I'm going to record in the morning, and just wanted a chance to share a little bit of that with you. Is everybody going to sleep? I appreciate all 34 of you suffering through that, though. That was great of you. So, hey, Parker, thanks for sticking in there, buddy. I appreciate it. So, all right. Oh, thanks, Nikki. All right, guys. Hey, I think it's time for us to wrap this up here tonight. I appreciate you all coming out. I appreciate the Dangerous Prayers journey. Like I said, the name of the text messages that you all are getting tomorrow will change. No longer will it be a Dangerous Prayers live stream. Starting now, it's going to be a Joseph live stream. So you'll notice that when you get the text tomorrow evening about that. So, yeah. Thanks, Teresa. Okay, Randy, good. Thank you. Thank you, Kim, Linda, Eric. Appreciate you guys. So, all right. So bring your questions tomorrow night. Go read Genesis 37. Bring your questions with you as we're going to be talking about Joseph, kind of getting his story started. And again, I don't know how far we'll get and how far the study will go. That we'll kind of see that as we go. But I don't really want to do sermons about Joseph. That's not the purpose of this experience. But I'd very much like to have conversations with you about this as best I can. So, all right. So, we're coming to that moment we have every night now where we're kind of winding down toward the sign off. Yes, there is something with the hands, Eric. You're right. So, to any of you who are out and about tomorrow, we will be collecting those cans that have pop open tops. Um, so if you could bring some by at between 11 and 1 tomorrow, that would be great. And yeah, just bring them by, and then Agape's coming at 1 o'clock to pick them all up. So we dropping them in the door down by the sanctuary on the other end of the building. So don't bring them over here because I don't think we're gonna have room. I've already taken. I'm going to carry Luke's down there here in a minute, but we've dropped off stuff down at the other end. So you bring it over by the sanctuary, that would be great. I appreciate you all very much. Yeah, something with the hands. Joe Sutton has a lot to say about Joseph. I have no idea why that might be. We'll see about that. Good night, Angie. And thank you, April. I appreciate it. Thank you, Teresa. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Kim. Randy, you've had a pretty good day today. So let's have a great grand finale. Yes, Cheryl, good night to you. Be safe. Everybody be careful what you're doing because we want to see you back here tomorrow night. And now for the time that you've all been waiting for. It's where Pastor Tim tells you to go wash your hands. Have a good night, everybody.